Welcome back, guys. I'm going to start my videos today with a long-form review of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I picked up all three of the first three issues that are out this morning, and I just sat through and read all three of them back to back to back. And I've got to say, this is a very intriguing read. Let me flip it around here for. It's written by Patrick Horvath, illustrated by Patrick Horvath, and the letters are by Hassan Otsman Elha. It's really interesting because you've got a main character who is not at all what she seems. She comes off as just one of the regular locals, but she's got a really sinister secret to her. Now, the artwork is not simplistic. It's really well done. You can tell each character, and you don't have to really say, who is that? Who am I trying to read? Who am I trying to see? I can figure out who this is. So Samantha right there, the bear at the very bottom right, is your main character. And like I said, she's got a secret. And that secret involves going out of town. But her secret, by the end of the first issue, is exposed by a tragedy that happens in the town where she lives. And like she says if somebody is hurting people here in this town, then we would have a very serious problem. So that sets up the main characters and sets up that she has her own business and she runs a, kind of mom and pop hardware store there in town. And the name of the town is Woodbrook. And each one of these front pages starts off by showing, somewhat of a newspaper. And the second issue kicks off at the funeral of a character named Martin, who had been the town librarian for 30 years. And apparently there was some sort of incident, and he wasn't all right, because you get that notion at the beginning of the first issue. You see him walking around town asking people, hey, have you seen my eyeglasses? Can I get a newspaper? And he'd already bought a newspaper. He had just bought one. And, hey, can you tell me where my glasses are at? And people will, they're on your head, Martin. They're right there. They're right there. So it was a really sad situation to see a character get killed in that manner. He was tied up, almost crucifix style to the mast of a float as Woodbrook was celebrating the town's 200th anniversary. And now the sheriff has to figure out who killed Martin and why. And so you've got the Miss Piggy character right here, that Cherry Gherkins. And Cherry has got a short fuse. And she's upset because they haven't figured out who did the slaying yet, who killed their neighbor. And you've got Birdie, who is a turtle. And it looks like he got attacked by somebody, because it was Birdie's float that Martin was tied to. So somebody assumed and accused Birdie of being the one that killed Martin. But you're trying to figure out exactly who it is as it goes along. And it's really interesting as far as you've got a cast of characters that you're meeting for the first time, but you realize it could be any small little town. I live near Memphis now, right on the outskirts of Memphis, but I grew up in a little small town in Mississippi, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows all the town secrets and, whose granddaddy was the town drunk and all of those things. And so it does give that slice of life about anybody could be the murderer, and it could be somebody from out of town, or it could be somebody that you go to church with, go shopping with every week. Somebody, it could be the butcher that you go buy your meat from every week. Or it could be somebody that has just swung through the town and decided to start taking people out. So you see Cherry Gherkins here harassing the locals at the coffee shop, and Samantha comes up behind her and pretty much, says whoever hit Bertie was extremely upset, and they tend to fly off the handle, even though it's pretty obvious that he didn't have anything to do with anything. And so Cherry spins around and accuses Samantha that, if you say any other word, I'll sue you for harassment and defamation. And pushes her down and shoves her way out of the coffee shop. Real cheery character, that. But Cherry decides to go out for a run. And she says if anybody decides to mess with Cherry Gherkins, it'll be the last mistake that they make. And she ends up meeting the murderer, whoever the murderer is. And they end up getting her as well. She just becomes another victim. So at the end of it, Cherry's husband was upset at the way things had gone down, and says that they need to figure out what can be done to stop this murderer. And then in the third issue, then everybody's locking their doors. Everybody's locking their doors and trying to stay safe and trying to stay in their house because they don't know who's out there. So you've got the lion-headed character, and, my kids are convinced that they're going to get murdered just walking to school, and, hey, can I grab 2 pounds of the roast? So you've got the butcher is introduced in this issue as a main character, and Samantha has her doubts and her thoughts, and she's trying to solve it before the cops solve it, because if the cops get involved, then they'll start sniffing around and they might find her set of bodies, even though she buries them outside of town. So she's trying to do her own research and her own detective work so that she can find whoever it is that's murdering these people and shut them down before the cops get on to her and get wise to her. So she ends up breaking a window at the butcher shop to get the other character out of her house, because she thought that she saw that lady talking to her husband, and her husband's supposed to be dead. So she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And she sneaks into the house, and she's just about out of the house when the girl goes to take a shower. And she says, I just had to check you out because I thought you were the one that was the murderer. And she said, no. She said, my husband and I had the life that we'd always wanted. And, but he died. Frank died. And, after that, I just wore a mask so that people would stop worrying about me. But I get lonely. Don't tell anybody what happened here, please. And then she said, now get out of my house. So now they're at the funeral for Cherry Gherkins. And Samantha's still, scoping everybody out, trying to figure out what's going on. And at the end, could it be the field mouse? So Stories like this have a different feel. You can tell these kind of stories with anthropomorphic animals and get away with it where you might not be able to tell a straightforward story with human characters, because people are more willing to accept the atrocities that they see when they read these kind of stories with funny animal characters. It's the same principle with Animal Castle that comes out from a Blaze. It's pretty much Animal Farm, except if it was written for human consumption and had human characters, that book would have been even more upside down. Animal Farm by George Orwell would have been even more dastardly and possibly even more banned, and attempted to be censored than it is now. But since Orwell used animals to talk about caste systems and classes and politics and the rights and the wrongs of the haves and have-nots, then it's a little more acceptable to do that. And people are willing to read that, whereas they wouldn't want to read necessarily about these things happening to their fellow humans. So anyway, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, issues 1 through 3, a really, really excellent read. I cannot recommend it enough. I can't wait for issue 4 to come out. It's only a 6-issue miniseries from what I believe. But I can't wait for the next issue so that I can keep going there with Samantha and try to figure out exactly who the killer is and what their motivation is. All right, guys, let me get back to reading. I got more videos to make.